My parents chose my pregnant sister over me on my 18th birthday, but karma exposed their true colors at her wedding. Hey Reddit. I've always been the forgotten child in my family. My older sister, Leah, has been the golden child for as long as I can remember. She's pretty, outgoing, and everything my parents ever wanted in a daughter. Meanwhile, I've always been quieter, more introverted, and less shiny, I suppose. Growing up, I was used to being in her shadow, but what happened on my 18th birthday pushed me to my breaking point. Leah, at 22, had announced her pregnancy a few weeks before my birthday. My parents were over the moon. They immediately began showering her with gifts and attention, talking non-stop about how excited they were to become grandparents. I was happy for her too, but I couldn't help feeling like my own milestone birthday was being completely overshadowed. As my birthday approached, I naively hoped my parents would make an effort to celebrate me for once. Turning 18 felt monumental to me. I was finally an adult, and I wanted to feel like my existence mattered to them. But when the day came, it was painfully clear where their priorities lay. Instead of waking up to a birthday breakfast or even a simple happy birthday, I was greeted by my parents scrambling to plan a surprise baby shower for Leah. I overheard them whispering about it in the kitchen, completely oblivious to the fact that I was sitting right there. They were debating what kind of cake to get for the shower, and all I could think was, what about my cake? What about my birthday? I tried to brush it off, telling myself that maybe they'd planned something small for later. But as the day dragged on, it became clear that my birthday wasn't even on their radar. Leah showed up in the afternoon, glowing with all the attention my parents were giving her, and they immediately started discussing baby names and nursery ideas. I sat there, invisible, as my parents fawned over her and her growing belly. By dinner time, I'd had enough. I quietly asked my mom if we were going to do anything for my birthday. She looked genuinely confused for a moment before saying, "Oh, sweetheart, we completely forgot. You know how exciting all of this is for Leah. Can't we just celebrate your birthday another day?" Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't just an afterthought, I wasn't a thought at all. I nodded numbly, excused myself from the table, and went to my room. I spent the rest of my birthday alone, crying and wondering why I was never enough for them. The following months only cemented my decision to distance myself from my family. My parents became consumed with Leah's pregnancy, and I became nothing more than a spectator in their lives. They barely noticed when I started working extra shifts at my part-time job or when I aced my finals. They didn't even ask about my college plans. When Leah gave birth, my parents were ecstatic. They spent all their time helping her with the baby, leaving me to fend for myself. It was during this time that I started realizing just how toxic their favoritism was and how much it had affected my self-esteem over the years. I decided I deserved better, and I began saving up to move out. Fast forward 4 years, and I was in a completely different place. I had graduated college, landed a good job, and built a life for myself far away from my family's drama. I rarely visited home, and when I did, it was always the same. Leah was still the golden child, and my parents barely acknowledged my existence. I had grown numb to it by then, but it still hurt in small, quiet ways. Then Leah announced her engagement. My parents were thrilled and immediately threw themselves into planning her dream wedding. I wasn't surprised when they barely involved me in the process, but what did catch me off guard was Leah asking me to be her maid of honor. At first, I thought it was an olive branch, a chance to mend our strained relationship. But it quickly became clear that Leah had no interest in reconciliation, she just needed someone to do the grunt work. Despite my reservations, I agreed. I wanted to believe that maybe this time, things would be different. Maybe my parents would see how much effort I was putting in and finally appreciate me. But as the months went on, it became clear that I was nothing more than a glorified wedding planner. Leah dumped every tedious task on me, from addressing invitations to coordinating with vendors, while my parents gushed over how amazing she looked in her dress. The final straw came a week before the wedding. I had spent months helping Leah plan every detail, but when my parents hosted a pre-wedding family dinner, they didn't even save me a seat at the table. I ended up eating in the kitchen with the caterers while my family laughed and celebrated without me. That was the moment I realized I was done. Done trying to please them. Done being invisible. I decided to attend the wedding, but not in the way they expected. On the day of the wedding, I showed up, but not as the dutiful maid of honor. Instead, I walked in wearing a stunning dress I had saved up for, a bold red gown that turned heads the moment I entered. I wasn't trying to upstage the bride, but I wasn't going to fade into the background either. As the ceremony progressed, I couldn't help but notice how disorganized everything was. Leah had insisted on taking over the final details after I quit, and it showed. The flowers were wrong, the seating chart was a mess, and the cake arrived an hour late. My parents were frantically trying to fix everything, but it was clear they were in over their heads. Then came the toast. As the maid of honor, I was expected to give a speech, but since I had relinquished that role, Leah's best friend stepped in. Her speech was filled with generic platitudes, and it was painfully obvious that she barely knew Leah. Guests started whispering, and the awkwardness was palpable. Karma had come knocking, and I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. For once, Leah and my parents were the ones scrambling to salvage a mess they had created, while I sat back and enjoyed the show. After the wedding, Leah confronted me, accusing me of ruining her big day. I calmly reminded her that I had done everything she asked of me and that it wasn't my fault she couldn't handle things on her own. My parents tried to intervene, but I stood my ground. For the first time in my life, I chose myself over their approval. It's been a few months since the wedding, and I've cut off all contact with my family. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. I've finally found peace and learned to surround myself with people who value and respect me. As for my parents and Leah, I hear through the grapevine that they're still dealing with the fallout from the wedding. Karma has a funny way of balancing the scales, doesn't it? That's all for today's video, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more exciting content. See you next time.